Thanks be to God. Amen. Friends, what's your favorite mug? What is your favorite glass or cup or chalice? Does it have a story? Does it fit well cradled in your hands, especially on a cold day? Has it been a tried and true companion over the years? This is my favorite mug. The 1000 Mugs Project, which I know Christine Grotto has been connected through Harvard. Some incredible potters and artists there. Marlene Nelson being one of them, the late Marlene, friend of mine through my family, crafted this mug and raised money through this project from potters to be in solidarity with those in rural South Africa. And for me, when I sip this mug, I think of Marlene, I think of some Zulu faces that are precious to me and people that I know well. And so there's connection in this mug. It is about nourishment. It is about my favorite beverage of a hot cup of coffee coming into my body, but it's also about community. Another glass that has come to me, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is a whiskey glass. I am not a hard liquor drinker at all, but my friend, dear friend, is. And he sent me this, and he sent the 5 of us who went to college together the same glass. And we have used these glasses. I put kombucha in it. They put other things. And every few months during this pandemic, we have Zoomed in together and sipped together and listened to music together over Zoom as a way to connect during these hard times. So to me, this container is also about connection. Friends, today's reading from John has some containers in it. There are jars, there are glasses, there are perhaps mugs. Today's gospel account speaks of a miraculous sign. And our gospels are filled with other miraculous signs. The vast majority of them act to address real needs of people: healing, feeding, calming, liberating, healing of diseases of the body and society, feeding the hungry who face food apartheid and lack of access, calming the seas of uncertainty and anxiety, and liberating those from the oppressions of the mind and empire. And of course, the occasional raising from the dead. But today we encounter an outlier, a miracle that doesn't seem to fit well. One of these miraculous signs is not like the other: water into wine. It seems like it doesn't quite line up to the magnitude of other signs in the Gospels. How is this liquid, shape-shifting magic trick an expression of the life of liberation we link with Jesus? Perhaps you, like me, have often been puzzled over this pericope, or on some level been unimpressed. For as the story goes, it seems Jesus himself at first is equally unimpressed. The setting, a wedding. Jesus and his mother and his friends have gotten the invite, and the wine flows until it doesn't, and the host runs out and the tap runs dry. Mary steps up and intervenes and notifies Jesus of this crisis. Now, Jesus doesn't feel it is such a crisis and responds with that dismissive tone that causes our heads to spin. Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? Who cares? Jesus responds. It's not my time. This isn't my call. This is not why I'm here. And while this text does not say this, we can imagine the look of response from Mary. A raised eyebrow, a simple furrowed brow. No words of reprimand are then needed. She trusts her influence over her son and her son's ability to respond by doing the right thing. And so she simply invites the servers, do whatever he tells you. And of course, mother is always right. Jesus moves beyond his initial protest and steps it up. The jars are filled with water, but what flows out is the finest of wine. Now, this is the first of 7 so-called signs of Jesus as recorded in John's Gospel. It's not named as a miracle, but a sign, semeion in Greek, signs that point us to something beyond themselves. As a road sign alerts us to what is to come, it is liturgically fitting that this is lifted at the beginning of the season of Epiphany, the season of truths showing forth. Now, this first sign of Jesus showing forth is not a healing, a feeding, or a raising, but a changing. Water to wine, the liquid of subsistence to the liquid of abundance. Now, unlike water, we can get by just fine without wine. Or can we? There is no doubt this fermented grape derivative holds some sway. We can hear the 1970s Godspell refrain, so let your light shine. We all need help to feel fine. Let's have some wine. Wine as joy. Wine that allows the party to continue. Wine that helps the people feel fine. In our scriptures, especially for the ancient Hebrew prophets, wine often functions as a symbol for restoration, and in particular for the ultimate restoration in the new era to come, the future, the eschatological feast of joy and gladness. And scholars have long emphasized this point. Jesus, like fine wine, is our future hope for restoration. And yes, true. This is true. But I wonder if there's something more subtle at work also here. I wonder if our well-intentioned focus on Jesus ironically causes us to miss some deeper truths. What if Jesus' first sign in this gospel is not at all about Jesus? What if the one who says the last shall be first and over again instructs the people he heals and feeds not to tell anyone about these miraculous signs? What if this liberator Jesus doesn't want us to focus in on him here? What if the primary focus should be on the ones who make the possibility for change possible in the first place? What if it's all about who fills the jars? There would, of course, be no wine without the water, no transformation without the servants who fill the 6 heavy stone purification jars with 20 to 30 gallons of water in an age before sinks and taps. No jars without the stonemasons who first carved them. No water for the wine without a well skillfully dug, without the strong necks, backs, and arms of those who fetch it, and of course, without the rains that fall, infiltrate the soils, and fill the aquifers. There would be no water in the well in the first place. We are indeed, as Reverend King has taught us, caught up in that inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. It takes a beloved community to fill the jars. It takes all to bring change. In this story, Jesus takes the gifts that come from the disenfranchised, the gifts so lovingly provided through hard work, and continues that miracle by transforming them so that the wedding feast can continue. Jesus' point is to center those who are too often forgotten. For it is these who fill the jars and who get to see Jesus' water to wine glory in this story. Not the chief steward, nor the host, nor the wealthy, but the laborers. The ones who so easily are overlooked are the ones who become first in the gaze of God. Jesus knows who fills the jars and honors them by revealing himself to them. This is a small but powerful way to show solidarity and dignity, but also to spread joy. He sees them and also shows them. On some level, we all long to be known, to be seen, to be understood, to be loved. There is freedom in the authenticity that allows us to show ourselves to others. By being seen by others and showing them who we are, we spread joy not only to them, but ourselves. And remember, it is Mary who sets all of this forth into motion in the first place. She is the one who calls Jesus out of his curmudgeonly, dismissive, who cares state. She helps Jesus to reveal himself to those who are most in need of hope, including perhaps himself. She sees what Jesus misses in himself, that part of his mission that is Jubilee, that is joy, to bring the party, to realize the jubilation joy in Jubilee, and to help others be led into the abundant life. Next week here in our Worship at Covenant, we will hear Jesus' mission statement, once again as told in Luke's Gospel, when he unfurls the scroll of Isaiah and deeply affirms the way of Jubilee. But I think it's really important that before hearing about being anointed to bring good news to the poor in the form of releasing captives, restoring vision, and liberating the oppressed, we hear about joy. Gladness filled to the brim of stone jars, laughter flowing down like waters, revelry like an ever-flowing stream, joy as a party. Friends, it is easy, or is it easy? Is it easy or hard for you to sing the refrain? I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. Remembering that fountains flow continually, joy at all times. That is a tough row to hoe. Joy as pandemics, supremacies, and insurrections swirl. How often do we find ourselves lurking on the sidelines of the dance, convincing ourselves, like Jesus said first, that the joy is not for us. It's not the right time. There is way too much work to do. There is too much pain and injustice. How can we join the party? Mary knows that wine is essential. On one level, the provision of wine helps the wedding host avoid the shame of running out. We recall first century Palestinian weddings were often week-long events and cherished chances even for the poor to show hospitality to others. Weddings allowed people to express healthy self-esteem and dignity, and they were rare times to practice abundance. And so in this context, Mary knows to push Jesus to begin to step into himself more fully, to understand the essential ingredients of celebration in the movement for love. She sees value in extending the party, the hospitality, the celebrations, the gratitude, the laughter, for in all of these, there is release, there is Sabbath keeping, and there is restoration. Ana Lisa Velasco Vanchez reminds us of this point, that Mary is reminiscent of so many women in the shadow of male leaders, pushing them to step up and to live into their power. She talks about being reminded of Coretta Scott King, Eleanor Roosevelt, Frida Kahlo, and Cynthia Dunbar. Powerful women, creative women, brave women, astonishingly patient women, she writes. Mary here helps Jesus know himself better, and in so doing to reveal himself in the midst of community celebration. She helps him become more fully himself, and in setting an abundance for the sake of joyful community context where all matter, from host to servant to stonemaker to sacred earth, she helps set Jesus forth in his ministry. And that is why today on our bulletin cover, I have spotlit in the blessed shadow of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s prophetic legacy, the incredible work of Jubilee of three powerful women that we all can be blessed by, all three of whom are informed by joy. A contemporary of Dr. King, St. Fannie Lou Hamer, who many call the spirit of the civil rights movement, is known for her incredible legacy for voting rights in Mississippi and beyond. She is the one who sang in the face of fear. There's a story of her going home from a road trip from Mississippi to Indianapolis. On her way back, she was pulled over by police at the edge of her hometown. The driver was arrested for driving a bus that had the wrong color, and fear arose among the passengers quickly, but in the midst of that fear, Fannie Lou began to sing This Little Light of Mine. She began to sing songs of her spiritual underpinnings and songs of the movement, which helped calm the fear. And from that moment on, she became known as the voice, and the voice for calm and the voice for agitation to overturn the laws that kept people from voting. Above the image of that yellow dress of St. Hamer, written and painted by Akua Holmes, is a contemporary for us, 18-year-old Isra Hirsha. This climate jubilee activist and daughter of Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is someone who celebrates her Black Muslim feminist roots. She is someone who sees deep truths of the intersectionality between race, climate, and justice. She's the co-founder and co-executive director of the U.S. Youth Climate Strike, a group that brought some 100,000 kids to strike for climate justice in 2019. And although she says that she came late to climate work, she was already at the old age of 15 when she started working and being an activist. She knows the power of agency and the joy of activism. If you know anything about TikTok, which I do not, but it's something in the World Wide Web, apparently, you can find videos of Isra there. And you can catch some of the fierce joy that she brings to this serious and hard work. That smile depicted in the art by Nissa Tsun knows the depth of the struggle, but like Hamer, sings on. And finally, the painting by Amelia Bates under the MLK memorial photo from DC is of 41-year-old Jessica Reznicek of Iowa. Reznicek, in 2017, stood up boldly in nonviolent opposition to the Dakota Access Pipeline, that dirty pipeline that flowed through Standing Rock and elsewhere, that continues to threaten our climate and the water that is life. And for her crime of civil disobedience, she is now serving 8 years in federal prison, as she was tried as a domestic terrorist. Jessica is an active part of the Catholic worker movement, and she acted deeply out of her faith, her Christian faith that follows this renegade rabbi who calls her to stand up and act on behalf of the earth, on behalf of indigenous communities. This past August, on the night before she went into federal prison, she gathered with friends after serving that whole day at the soup kitchen where she worked regularly in her Catholic worker house. She gathered in a sacramental way at table with her friends, many of whom were underhoused and fellow activists, and broke bread and laughed and had joy and had wine. And that image of feasting, even in the face of the things that oppress and the injustices that come, is an icon for all of us this day. Friends, these faces of joy that stand up against empire, who like Mary know the swords of injustice that pierce their hearts, are guides for each of us this MLK weekend. For the Jubilee work of dismantling structural racism is indeed hard and long, and we have no idea if that arc is going to curve. But without the overflowing wine, there is no chance that it will curve. It is particularly painful that on this MLK Sunday and weekend that the basic right to vote is once again threatened, just as it was in the 1960s. It is under assault by all in this country who are not actively opposing white supremacy's grip on this country. The insurrection on January 6th sadly has not died, but has only shape-shifted into the bills and laws meant to make it harder for people, especially people of color, to vote. These are frightening times, and there are no easy answers, and it is hard. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired of the so-called moderate legislators who continue to uphold such often racist tactics like the filibuster in the Senate. More than ever, we need to sing out with the bold courage of Saint Fannie Lou Hamer. And as we face the unknowns of this climate crisis, we need the fierce joy of the climate jubilee activists in Hirschi and Reznicek, and the unnamed thousands who are daily rising up to show us another world is possible, even when it gets them into good trouble. So for these voices, like Jesus, who also unfurl a scroll from Isaiah, that sing out, for Zion's sake, we will not keep silent. We are inspired and we want to join in the movement. For they invite us to join the song and to say that for Greater Boston's sake, we will not rest until no one is termed forsaken, until no land is called desolate, until the land is married and there is a wedding feast of jubilee joy with the earth and with each other. Friends, this past Thursday, one of our beloved members, Adrian Couples, died after a year-plus journey facing esophageal cancer. No question, a light has been dimmed in our world, in our community, whether you knew Adrian or you did not. The connected community has lost a light. The evening of her death saw a tradition that was started when Adrian was first diagnosed with cancer and continued daily since then. Neighbors on Olmsted Street there in Jamaica Plain would gather every night to sing standing on the sidewalk below her second-storied window as she opened it and listened. A community that gathered in solidarity despite a pandemic, that sang up joy into that window, that lifted both Adrian and her beloved John as they were buoyed and deeply blessed. I know Betty and Merlin have often joined in those singing circles. And this past Thursday, on the day where she went from this life to more life, Tim and Betsy also joined the chorus. And they sang that Celtic air, A Parting Glass. Good night and joy be with you all. A glass is lifted to the saints who have gone before us. A glass is lifted for joy. Friends, the table will soon be set for us, the feast, the wedding banquet, where all are welcome and radical equality is achieved and abundance is given for all, where Jesus, Mary, and all the unnamed servants will be our hosts. So as we gather for communion later, I invite you to gather a favorite cup, a favorite mug, perhaps you already have, and fill it with a favorite beverage. Find some kombucha or some wine or some sacred water from that sacred tap. And place something in this container to remind yourselves that the way of Jubilee is the way of abundance for ourselves and for the world. We are given the nourishment and the sweet taste of Jubilee in all things. And so we lift again a glass to those who are among us, spurring us on to that Jubilee. Sláinte mhath, salud, cheers, and amen.